A secret test track in the California desert. A strange place to find a Japanese sport bike. But stranger still is the story of the man behind the machine. A man who created a motorcycle company that should have gone out of business 50 years ago.
He was one of hundreds that took bicycles and put engines in them. Most of them failed, and he failed. And he kept trying, he kept trying.
He was a man whose passion for racing kept him going, even when it almost drove his company bankrupt.
He got in racing even before he'd been around for 10 years. You know, it almost broke him.
But this amazing man would not be broken. In fact, he dared to fight convention and always did things his way.
He was really a visionary and a maverick.
A maverick whose fascination with speed extended into his factories, where today they know precisely how long it takes to build a motorcycle.
It is about 1 hour or 3,600 seconds.
He was a man who created the most popular motorized vehicle in history.
So far, worldwide cumulative production has been around 54 million units.
Another of his creations was a motorcycle with virtually every feature found on the car.
When most people think about features like anti-lock brakes, huge cargo capacity, satellite navigation, heated seats, and an airbag, they're not thinking about a motorcycle.
And most people don't think about the man behind the motorcycle, the man who never gave up, the man who built the largest motorcycle company in the world. Few people even know that his first name was Soichiro, but everybody knows his last name. It's Honda. Modern-day Tokyo is the most populated metropolitan area in the world. With 35 million people living here, Tokyo can seem overwhelming. Tokyo has long been a city swarming with people. Even in 1922, more than 2 million people lived there. But the crowds didn't intimidate Soichiro Honda. He was drawn to Tokyo by his fascination for a new mechanical invention that had recently arrived in Japan: the internal combustion engine.
Mr. Honda was a true spirit and a genius, an entrepreneur who was absolutely captivated by the sound, the feel, and the essence of internal combustion engines.
While Mr. Honda was captivated by engines, he was also pragmatic, stubborn, and yet extremely creative. Without money or connections, he would never become part of Japanese traditional corporate culture. But he didn't care. Soichiro Honda was a man with a dream.
Soichiro Honda wanted to be #1 in the world, not just in Japan. That was his dream.
Today, Soichiro Honda's dream to create the largest motorcycle company in the world is a reality. Honda sells 13 million motorcycles a year. No other company anywhere even comes close. Soichiro Honda was born in 1906 in a small village that eventually became part of Hamamatsu, Japan. His father was a blacksmith who also repaired bicycles. Soichiro left home when he was just 16 to spend 6 years as an apprentice automobile mechanic in Tokyo. He lacked a formal education. After years as an apprentice and working 6 and 7 days in his garage, Soichiro Honda had a successful business going. But World War II changed everything. In 1948, Soichiro Honda risked his entire life savings, $3,200, to open a new business. The Honda Motor Company. Its initial goal? Provide desperately needed, cheap transportation for a country coming out of the ravages of war.
で、宗一郎さんは人の役に立ちたいという思いで製品を作られた。
Soichiro Honda's basic desire was to offer something very useful to the people. And at that time in Japan, the only way for people to get around was on bicycles.
Working out of a wooden shack, Soichiro Honda and a few helpers wrenched small, Army surplus gasoline engines onto bicycle frames. Honda calls his motorized bicycle the A-Type. It is the machine that puts the Honda Motorcycle Company in business. But just being in business isn't enough for Soichiro Honda. He dreams of building a real motorcycle with an engine and a frame he designs and manufactures. In 1949, that dream becomes a reality when the Honda D-Type is introduced. Ironically, that first complete motorcycle is called the Dream.
This is the Honda Dream D. Our company was established in 1948, and this motorcycle was brought to market just 1 year later in 1949. I'll tell you why we put the name Dream on this model. When this motorcycle was completed, all the engineers and mechanics were impressed with their work, and one of them said, "Wow, this is like a motorcycle dream."
The Dream D is a huge success, and by the end of 1949, Honda has 60% of the Japanese motorcycle market. It seems almost everyone in Japan is riding a Honda.
Motorcycle use in Japan in the 1950s increased quite dramatically, and at one point in time, there was a motorcycle for every 20 households.
Many of those motorcycles are yet another new model, the Honda Dream E. Introduced in 1951, the Dream E is a breakthrough model for Honda in both performance and sales. But the E-Type success wasn't enough for the dreamer in Soichiro Honda. Racing is still his passion, and in contrast to traditional Japanese modesty, he issues a remarkable public challenge.
In 1954, with his company just barely in its infancy and just barely getting its financial footing, he shocked his employees by saying, well, now that we're an established motorcycle company, we're going to go racing, and we're going to win the world championship. And everybody was stunned.
Soichiro stuns everyone by publishing this memo and putting the challenge to himself, his workers, and the entire world in writing. He declares his goal to take on the best of the best at the most prestigious motorcycle race of the era, the world-famous Isle of Man TT.
If you've never been to the Isle of Man, it's hard to explain, but it's a unique place. You go there and, you know, it's probably one of the only races like that still exists.
It is a grueling test of both man and machine, taking place on the narrow public roads that twist up and down a tiny island in the Irish Sea. Both then and now, it is considered the most difficult and dangerous race in the world.
I can understand, you know, the feeling when they first went there to say, if we want a slice of this, this is what I call racing.
Soichiro Honda didn't just want a slice of racing. He wanted the whole pie. So in 1959, he borrows money he doesn't have to enter 4 bikes at the Isle of Man. Trying to avoid unnecessary attention, Honda's factory race team shows up calling itself the Honda Speed Club. Hardly anyone pays attention to the little upstart company from Japan, but that doesn't faze Soichiro Honda.
ホンダはですね、世界のレベルに追いつくために
Our target was to catch up with European motorcycle companies, and we thought the shortcut for us was to participate in world-class racing.
It's a shortcut that quickly pays off. Even though none of the Hondas win, all 4 bikes finish the race. In an era where mechanical breakdowns were common, the fact that all 4 Hondas make it across the finish line is remarkable. It is the beginning of Honda's reputation for building reliable machines. Soichiro Honda leaves the Isle of Man determined to build a more powerful motorcycle. And a new design, called the RC160 series, is born. Motorcycles that would redefine how to get more power from an engine.
非常に難しい質問だと思うんですが、これ私技術者ではないので。
At that time, Honda believed that the best way to maximize an engine's power was to raise the RPMs as much as possible.
The idea to increase the RPMs, the speed that pistons spin inside the engine, is part of Honda's mechanical genius. The result is what they call Honda music. The sound of 4 small cylinders firing at incredibly high speeds. This RC160 is part of Honda's museum collection, and the unique sound of its engine hasn't been heard in years. Today, the engine of this classic race bike can only be run for a few minutes. The men who fire up the motorcycle touch it lovingly and turn it off before the engine gets too hot. In 1961, the only heat being felt was by the competition, as Honda wins the Isle of Man.
It's 37 miles around the course. It's incredibly dangerous. It's incredibly fast. But it's like you go to the Isle of Man and you think, wow, those guys are men, you know.
Men who risk their lives and men who risk their fortunes. Running at the Isle of Man is expensive, and because Honda borrowed so much money to go racing, the Isle of Man almost puts the company out of business. But it also reveals a lot about Soichiro Honda's determination to win.
They were spending a lot of money. He hadn't even been in business 10 years yet, right? And money was starting to deplete, and he was getting unhappy with the
Every one of Honda's employees knew how he felt, and they still take great pride in Soichiro Honda's remarkable achievement.
そうレース用の、世界いわゆる
This model is the very first Honda motorcycle that was successful in world-class racing.
Winning the Isle of Man was a remarkable achievement, but it would take more than racing victories to become the largest motorcycle company in the world. To achieve that part of his dream, Soichiro Honda turned his focus to the American motorcycle market.
そうですね。やはり世界の
The
大市
major,
場は
most important motorcycle market was the American market.
To understand the American market firsthand, Soichiro Honda comes to the United States, and he is shocked by what he discovers.
He was really surprised. In 1950s in America, many people believed that there were only two kinds of people that rode motorcycles: outlaws and motorcycle cops. The market in the U.S. at that time was stagnant and somewhat exclusionary. It was hard to become a motorcyclist physically, financially, and socially. And Mr. Honda decided that that shouldn't be.
The American Honda Motor Company is created and opens its first office in Los Angeles on June 4th, 1959. Mr. Honda's plan was to change attitudes about motorcycles in the U.S. Ironically, his plan did not include the little Super Cub, the most successful two-wheel machine Honda has ever made. In 1959, the same year Honda enters the U.S. market, it sells 200,000 Super Cubs in other countries around the world.
In the case of Honda in the 50s, they didn't start in the U.S. by marketing the Cub. They were marketing other products. They had a variety of machines. Most of them were based on traditional designs that were adapted to the U.S. market.
But there were a handful of little Super Cubs in the U.S., used by the 8 employees of the American Honda Motor Company as reliable, fuel-efficient ways to get around town.
The Cub was initially being used by staff, but the reaction the staff got when people saw them riding it and the features and the advantages and the benefits of that design soon became readily apparent that the company said, you know, we ought to bring this in too.
But even with the Super Cub, Honda motorcycle sales in the U.S. didn't really take off until a unique advertising campaign was designed to change the public's attitude about motorcycles. The commercials first run in 1963, and Honda sells 100,000 motorcycles that year. By 1964, Honda captures nearly 50% of the entire U.S. motorcycle market. Public attitudes towards motorcycles are changing. In the 60s, Honda is relentless in its push to change the way Americans think about motorcycles. Honda gambles its entire annual advertising budget on sponsoring the Academy Awards. Then, it buys TV commercial time in the Super Bowl. The impact is virtually immediate.
There were people lined up at dealerships' doorways before stores opened the next day, the next Monday. It was pretty impressive.
Honda's sales success leads to more research and development. And by the late 60s, Honda is ready to take on all comers with a new motorcycle directly targeting the U.S. market. That motorcycle is called the CB750. Cycle World magazine calls the CB750 the most sophisticated production bike ever. Top speed, 120 miles an hour. Price tag, $1,495. The competition couldn't match any of love those numbers.
CB750 この CB750 フォアの前の CB450 が
This CB750 impressed people with its performance, and the price was very reasonable. That's why the CB750 was a big hit not only in the United States and Japan, but all over the world. This model could be regarded as the flagship of the sporty motorcycles for Honda.
Boy, that 750 four-stroke inline four-cylinder, those four pipes coming over, those four carburetors, I mean, that thing was all about motor. And in America, you know, we like it big and fast. I mean, we want it big and fast. We want to go across Texas with the throttle open, right? That's what we want. The CB750 fed that fantasy in all of us.
In the 1970s, the hottest Honda in America was the new CB750. It attracted thousands of fans. One of them, a teenager with an unusual nickname.
People call me Fast Freddy, and my name's Freddie Spencer.
Freddie Spencer was another reason CB750 sales skyrocketed in the U.S.
I started riding the CB750 in 1980, my first year with American Honda, and I was 18 years old.
Fast Freddie finished second at the 1980 Daytona 200. A remarkable accomplishment for a teenager who had never ridden such a powerful motorcycle in his life. In 1982, Freddie Spencer became the youngest rider in history to win at the highest level of the sport, Grand Prix racing in Europe. He was just 20 when he shocked the racing world by riding a Honda to victory in the Belgian Grand Prix.
It wasn't just the idea of go out there and do the best you can. At that level, it's war.
A war that Freddie Spencer escalated in 1985 by going after 2 world championships in the same year. Freddie would compete in 2 different classes of racing based on different engine sizes. No one has ever tried that before or since, and no one thought Freddie could do it, except for one man, the Maverick, Soichiro Honda.
He respected the fact that nobody thought we could do it.
No one outside of Honda might have thought racing and winning in both the 250cc and 500cc Grand Prix classes was possible. But inside the company, Soichiro tells the racing division to make it happen. The result? 2 motorcycles that become legends. The NSR 250 and the NSR 500.
でこの1985年はですね、フレディ・スペンサーにとりましてはもう一つの
1985 was a marvelous year for the rider Freddie Spencer. Not only did he become world champion in the 500cc class, but he was also world champion in the 250cc class. This is the Honda NSR 500, the factory race bike that in 1985 the genius rider Freddie Spencer won the World Championship Grand Prix on.
He was standing down on the podium. He had tears streaming down his face, and I got him up there, and there's a picture of him up there, and I've got my arm around him.
And for Fast Freddy, it would take a while to realize just what he and Mr. Honda had done.
You know, deep breath, deep release of breath. It was so demanding that the truth is that it took a while for it to sink in.
From Freddie Spencer's unprecedented victories in 1985 through today, Honda's heart still beats fastest on a racetrack.
This is the pride of Honda because this motorcycle achieved the pinnacle of MotoGP racing success. In 2002, this actual machine, the RC211V, made its debut in MotoGP with Valentino Rossi riding it. And we won the World Championship.
RC211V, really the fastest, best bike in the world, as it proven in Grand Prix. If you win in Grand Prix, you're building the best in the world. The RC name tag for Honda is magic.
The RC211V makes magic once more in 2006, when another American rider, Nicky Hayden, wins another world championship for Honda.
To see him basically grow up racing motorcycles and live the dream that any kid who starts riding and racing at local tracks can ultimately become world champion is a great statement to the ability of competition in America to be able to develop world champions.
Over the course of its history, Honda has won more world championships than any other brand. That's important to all riders because racing has a trickle-down effect.
The bikes that are winning races this year will be, technology from those bikes will trickle down in the next few years to us.
Another part of Honda's legacy is how technology developed for racing always ends up on bikes anyone can buy. Honda's latest sport bike, the CBR 1000RR, is a great example of how street riders benefit from racing.
Just light, incredibly powerful, superbly agile, and that's what the new 1000RR has sort of done. There are all these little details on that bike that you kind of miss, but what they've done is taken things off, reduced the number of fasteners. You know, you look inside the fairing, and the fairing's held together with, I think, like 4 screws.
It is the idea of getting a bike super light that changes direction and a bike with a lot of horsepower that can jump off the corner, and that's really what they've captured.
Honda CBR 1000RR is the company's top-of-the-line sport bike. And this is where all Honda CBR sport bikes are built. The Honda factory in Hamamatsu, Japan. The factory dates all the way back to 1954, but it's been modified and redesigned multiple times over the years. One thing that has never changed at the factory is that everyone always wears white work clothes. It is a unique form of quality control.
If you're wearing a white outfit, it's very conspicuous once it gets dirty.
Build one CBR, and the answer is virtually right down to the second.
It is about 1 hour or 3,600 seconds.
That 1 hour or 3,600 seconds begins with building the engine. And they do that with the engine turned upside down, assembling pieces from the bottom up. When an engine reaches the final assembly line, it's flipped over, or as they say at Honda, turned upside down in the right direction. each engine is finished, it begins a long trip through the factory, moving from the first floor, up to the second floor, down to the basement, and back up to the final motorcycle assembly line on the first floor again. It is a way to maximize the use of limited space within the factory.
In order to minimize the use of space and also to make it possible to shorten our main line, we are producing modules here. They are producing the front fork module. And here they are sub-assembling the front fork and the tire. In total, there are 7 modules and they are all sent to the main production line.
All the sub-assembly modules move around the factory on conveyor belts, perfectly synchronized by computer to arrive at precisely the right place and right time on the final assembly line. The first step is to install the engine into the frame.
This is a very important part of the process because the engine becomes part of the frame. There is a specific order in which the bolts need to be tightened, and there's a certain level of strength at which the bolts need to be tightened. All of these details will have an impact on the performance of the machine.
There are 43 different workstations along the final assembly line. On an average day, 2 shifts of people, working a total of 16 hours, produce 850 motorcycles, each one in precisely 3,600 seconds. After 3,600 seconds on the line, each finished motorcycle is fired up for the first time and ridden onto a special test platform.
This machine is used to carry out the final inspection of the motorcycle.
Final inspection makes use of a very sophisticated machine. Besides running computerized tests on the engine, brakes, suspension, and instruments, it has a special light-sensitive panel that makes one of the last checks of the whole process, running across the front of the new bike to be certain the headlights are perfectly aimed and aligned. Whatever model is being produced in Hamamatsu, the factory is a classic example of Japanese efficiency and quality control. The way they build their bikes is the way they define their brand.
Everybody's got an opinion on quality, but man, I can't think of too many people that wouldn't put Honda at the top of the heap for durability, quality, long-lasting.
On this line, we average 850 motorcycles per day, and at that rate, we see one motorcycle come off the line every 60 seconds.
Every 60 seconds, a new motorcycle is put into a crate for shipment around the world, where riders will measure time and numbers much differently than they do at the factory. Like 0 to 60 miles an hour in 2.9 seconds, a top speed of 181 miles an hour, and 148 horsepower on tap. The CBR 1000RR is the fastest Honda sport bike. But there's another motorcycle in the Honda line that takes sport and adds an incredible amount of luxury. That bike is called the Goldwing. In 1974, Honda again shocked the motorcycle world with the GL1000, otherwise known as the world's first Goldwing, a machine that would revolutionize the concept of motorcycle touring.
最初のこのコンセプトはですね、スーパースポーツモデルでした。
The first concept applied to this Goldwing was to make it a super sporty model, even though right now it's known as a Grand Tourer. But when we first started exporting it to the United States, the Goldwing was considered a super sporty motorcycle.
The GL1000, in the mid-70s was really kind of introduced as a super bike, but it progressed and evolved into this new kind of motorcycle, the full rig tourer.
Over the years, the Goldwing engine has constantly grown, from its original 1,000 cc's to today's 1,800 cc model. Next to the little Super Cub, the huge Goldwing is the second longest production run of any Honda motorcycle. More than 500,000 Goldwings have been built and sold in more than 60 different countries. The Goldwing is such an important icon that it occupies center stage in the main lobby of Honda headquarters in Tokyo, Japan. The newest version of the Goldwing was designed by Masanori Aoki.
The motorcycle, Goldwing, very lightweight feeling, and I promise you enjoy riding a motorcycle.
Beautiful chassis. We always talk about how much faster you can go on a Goldwing than you would ever expect, and how surprising it can be to be riding on a winding road and catch up with people who are riding sport bikes.
The newest Goldwing is the 5th generation of a motorcycle that's been in production for more than 30 years. Few motorcycles can match such longevity. Fewer still can lay claim to both creating and defining an entire segment of the motorcycle experience. The Honda Goldwing is the king of the road for long-distance, luxury touring motorcycles.
I've ridden the Goldwing all the way up to Nova Scotia, took from Boston. I cannot believe how good that motorcycle handled. It was tons of fun. Really a good acceleration, and really it's not, the bike that you see is not the bike that you have when you ride. It's an awesome bike.
The Goldwing is like, that's like an institution. It's a touring institution.
The factory in Marysville, Ohio, was yet another part of Soichiro Honda's dream. Once again, the Maverick had defied popular belief. Honda was the first Japanese motor company to build a factory in the United States, dispelling once and for all the misconception that American workers could not build high-quality products. Soichiro Honda personally oversaw the factory's plans and construction. The factory in Marysville produced its first motorcycle on September 10th, 1979.
It helped pave the way for Honda to go on to build everything from automobiles to minivans to power equipment products in the U.S.
Today, Honda has 17 manufacturing facilities in North America and builds nearly 1 million cars and trucks each year in the United States. But it all started with motorcycles and Marysville.
It has transcended into a large production facility that is unique in that it assembles its own engines, does its own plastic injection molding and final assembly, and is building the world's most sophisticated product in motorcycling, the Goldwing, and has built well over 500,000 of them in the last 25 years.
The Goldwing is so complex that it shares a lot of its technology with its four-wheeled relatives.
The beauty of the navigation system on the Goldwing is that it's the same system that's found in our automobiles.
There's a key difference between building a high-tech car and a high-tech motorcycle. On the bike, all that technology has to fit into about 1/4 the space. Another difference is that much more of the bike is built by hand. The Goldwing uses the largest aluminum frame ever built for a motorcycle. The pieces are machined to incredibly tight tolerances and then welded together by hand.
It's a full aluminum frame. It looks like a sport bike frame. And you know, to call a Goldwing a sport bike, that's pretty crazy, although it will out-accelerate most cars.
The 1.8-liter six-cylinder engine is as large as engines used in many cars.
The 6 is a completely unique engine, horizontally opposed six-cylinder engine that offers perfect balance. It's an engine that's so smooth that you can even balance a nickel on it while it's running.
In addition to its unique six-cylinder engine, the Goldwing has the largest wiring harness in the motorcycle world. It takes a lot of wires to connect all the systems, like the anti-lock brakes, cruise control, navigation, heated seats, and an 80-watt per channel stereo with 6 speakers.
They were putting stereos on them, and they were, you know, just really expanding the realm of what we thought we could have on a motorcycle. And they've always been good performers, too.
When the Goldwing is coming down the assembly line, the wire harness is a massive piece of equipment, but what's unique about it is that we actually warm the wire harness slightly before it's put onto the machine so that it conforms perfectly to all the bends and turns that it has to make as it wraps itself around the frame, so that the bodywork and all the other components on the machine fit perfectly.
Many of those components are built as sub-assemblies in other parts of the factory. Sub-assemblies like the front and rear wheels, the suspension systems, body panels, including the iconic Goldwing trunk and saddlebags, are moved to the final assembly line on giant overhead conveyor belts. Once everything is put together, every new Goldwing spends time in what they call a rolling test chamber, where they fire up the engine and a computer has its say about how well all the hand-built work was done. Then, each Goldwing is created for shipment to anywhere in the world. But the story doesn't end here. The more than 34-year history of the Goldwing is one of constant engineering challenges set and met, and that story continues.
The Goldwing is also unique because it's the first production motorcycle to have an airbag as an option.
Wherever in the world they're made, new Hondas always seem to end up here, in the middle of California's Mojave Desert. There was a giant lake here, but now it's a desert with extreme heat, wind, and blowing sand. It is the last place anyone would want to take their own motorcycle, but one of the first places Honda goes to test its newest machines. It is here in the desert that Honda has a unique research and development test facility, This is a place where the normally silent desert comes to life with a roar.
I know the place pretty well. The testing track that they use is unbelievable. You'll be riding along and you come into the pothole section. And then after you get through the pothole section, you go over the big bump section. And then after that, you go through the straightaway section with the jump at the end of it. I mean, it's just an unbelievable place. And one of the reasons that Honda does so well in America.
There are bumps, dips, and intentionally bad pavement, all designed to test the motorcycle in the real world. In the real world, the CBR 1000RR is good for more than 100 miles an hour in third gear, with 3 gears left to go. The CBR's engine can drive the bike from 0 to 60 miles an hour in 2.96 seconds. The Goldwing is a different breed of bike, a unique blend of comfort and performance. This is clearly a touring bike and not a sport bike. But for such a large motorcycle, it has a surprisingly sporty feel on the track. Soichiro Honda would be pleased with the newest Honda motorcycles.
I'm very fortunate to have spent quite a bit of time around him. We would talk and he would tell me back when he first started, you know, his dream.
Soichiro Honda's dream should have been impossible to achieve. No one knew or cared who he was when he started. An uneducated young man from rural Japan, he was a maverick without money or connections. Yet he never gave up. And today, the largest motorcycle company in the world bears the name Honda.
We all know they make cars. You know, they got into the car business. The true passion in Honda is motorcycles.
Some industry observers have said that everybody who rides a motorcycle today, regardless of the brand, has benefited from what Mr. Honda did for the motorcycle industry in the United States in the 1960s. And I think it's true.
Any other form of transport, there's nothing comes even close to the feeling you get from riding a motorcycle, the thrills you get.